This slide presentation covers the topic of community diversity within our overall discussion of how species arise and diversify over time and space. So, no species is an island. It always lives with other species in a biological community in a particular environment. You've seen how interactions among species affect biological communities. In this section, we'll consider how the many species in an area together produce the basic properties of biological communities and ecosystems. The main properties of interest to ecologists are 1. Diversity and abundance, 2. Community structure and patchiness, and 3. Complexity, resilience, productivity, and stability. So the questions you should be able to answer at the end of this section are: what is the relationship between species diversity and community diversity and stability? And are more diverse communities more or less stable? As a general rule, species diversity is greatest at the equator and drops as you move towards either of the poles. Though the number of species is lower near the poles, the abundance of particular species can be very high. Increasingly, human activities also influence biological diversity today. The cumulative effect of our local actions can dramatically alter biodiversity. When we look at how communities of organisms are structured, we can see that they are arranged randomly, where populations or individuals are scattered randomly as resources are available. That's one way. We also can be ordered or uniform. In an ordered community, patterns arise from competition and territoriality. The third type of community structure is called patchiness. Communities can be structured into groups for protection, mutual assistance, or reproductive purposes, and we call these patchy patterns. Really technical, huh? In this slide, we see the different ways that we can categorize these community structures. So we have the distribution of populations can be random in figure A, uniform in figure B, or clustered in figure C. Clustered is kind of the same as patchiness. Individuals can also be distributed vertically in a community. Forests, for instance, may have many layers, each with different environmental conditions and combinations of species. Distinct communities of plants, animals, and microbes live in the treetops at mid-canopy level and near the ground. This layering, known as vertical stratification, is best developed in tropical rainforests, as we see in this picture. Aquatic communities also are often stratified into layers formed by species responding to varying levels of light, temperature, salinity, nutrients, and pressure. Most landscapes exhibit patchiness in some way. The largest patches might contain core habitat, a relatively uniform environment that is free of the influence of edges. Often we consider generalist species to occur on edges, while many specialists may require the more consistent conditions of core habitat. The northern spotted owl, for example, nests in the interior of large patches of mature coniferous forests in the Pacific Northwest. In smaller patches, the owl fares poorly, possibly due to competition with closely related barred owl. A single pair of northern spotted owls may require over 1,000 hectares of core habitat to survive. Where communities meet, the environmental conditions blend and the species and microclimate of one community can penetrate the other. Called edge effects, the penetrating influences may extend hundreds of meters into an adjacent community. Complex landscapes include contrasting environments, edges, where they meet, and corridors connecting larger patches. Edges are biologically rich, but core areas are critical for many species. Shape can influence the availability of core areas in a habitat area or a preserve. In this figure, note that the total area of the two shapes is the same. The top one has no core area, but a very large surface area for edges. The bottom shape has a well-defined core area. Edge effects refer to the changes in the population or community structure that occur at the point where two habitats meet. The edge or boundary between the forest and the field in this photograph creates opportunities for diversity and speciation. However, we should note that different species are adapted to different environmental niches. For example, some birds are adapted to live at the edge of the forest, and some adapted to live in the middle of the forest. When humans cut down forests and create more edges, we also disrupt the habitat of forest-dwelling birds and simultaneously create opportunities for edge-dwelling species. This is an example. The brown-headed cowbird seen in this photograph is an example. When European settlers arrived in the American continent, there were vast stretches of undisturbed forest. As settlers cleared land to create farms, this created opportunities for the brown-headed cowbird to greatly expand its range, because it lives on the edge. The brown-headed cowbird is what we call a brood parasite, meaning it lays its eggs in the nests of other birds, like robins, and it thrives at the forest's edge. Ecologist Robert MacArthur proposed that the more complexity a community possesses, the more resilient it is when disturbances strike. He reasoned that if many different species occupy each trophic level, some can fill in if others are stressed or eliminated by external factors. The whole community has resilience and either resists or recovers quickly from disturbance. Often, we think of diversity in terms of species counts, but another aspect is community complexity. Complexity refers to the number of trophic levels in a community and to the number of species at each of those trophic levels. A complex community might have many trophic levels and groups of species performing the same function. Another factor that can contribute to resilience is productivity. Primary productivity is the production of biomass by photosynthesis. Plants, algae, and some bacteria produce biomass by converting solar energy into chemical energy, which they use or pass on to other organisms. We can measure primary productivity in terms of units of biomass per unit area per year, for example, in grams per square meter per year. Because cellular respiration in producing organisms uses much of that energy, a more useful term is called net primary productivity, or the amount of biomass stored after respiration. Productivity depends on light levels, temperature, moisture, and nutrient availability, so it varies dramatically among different ecosystem types. Tropical forests, coral reefs, and the bays and estuaries, those are places where rivers meet the ocean, have high productivity because of abundant energy and moisture. In deserts, a lack of water limits photosynthesis and productivity is low. On the Arctic tundra or on high mountains, low temperatures and low solar energy inputs inhibit plant growth and productivity. In the open ocean, a lack of nutrients reduces the ability of algae to make use of plentiful sunshine and water. So in this figure we see how biomass accumulates at different rates in different ecosystems. Differences in net primary production is chiefly due to temperature, rainfall, and nutrients. Interactions among species also boosts productivity. Looking at this figure, what ecosystems have the highest rates of biomass accumulation? In this section we learned about diversity and abundance. Diversity is the number of different species in an area, or the number per unit area. Abundance refers to the number of individuals in a particular species or of a group in an area. Humans can greatly affect both diversity and abundance by destruction or modification of habitat. We also learned about community structure, or how communities can be categorized by spatial patterns, which can be random, ordered, or patchy. In this section, we also cover the difference between a core habitat and an edge habitat. The edge habitat exists at the boundary between different ecosystems, for instance, a forest and a field, as we saw. The effects of the edge can penetrate many meters into a forest. Some species require a core habitat and some species thrive at the edge. Humans impact the survival of all these species when we develop land and create edges. Another important concept that we'll return to later in later lectures is the concept of resilience and diversity. The concept is that more diverse ecosystems are more stable and more resistant to change because as one species is removed or lost, there is another species in the same trophic level ready to take its place. Finally, we learned about primary productivity and that primary productivity decreases as we move away from the equator. Primary productivity is the production of biomass by photosynthesis and is expressed as units of biomass or energy per unit area per year. This figure shows projected fragmentation and destruction of great ape habitat in Central Africa.